Harry's wife, the fury against Harry, Part 1. Harry is in a sustained devaluation. His wife is a mid-range narcissist. This means that she's largely passive-aggressive and portrays a facade to the outside world. However, behind closed doors, she will use both cold fury, sulking, not talking, cold shouldering, glaring, and instances of heated fury, shouting, screaming, possibly destruction of property, possibly even physical violence. Many narcissists, particularly those that are mid-range, make the outside world think that they are decent people, able people, kind people. Yet, behind the proverbial closed door, there will be a long-suffering intimate partner primary source, and in some instances, suffering non-intimate secondary sources, children. Often it's the intimate partner primary source who gets the devaluing behaviour, and the children are triangulated with that individual so that they are actually treated well for the purposes of seeking to alienate the IPPS further. At worst, they witness the devaluing behaviour, but none is directed towards them. In some instances, the home is a hellhole, that both the intimate partner primary source is subjected to cold and heated fury, alongside the children being subjected to the same. The intimate partner primary source victim finds themselves unable to defend their children as a consequence of the manipulative behaviours of the narcissist, but also because their own coping mechanisms have become so eroded as the way that they have been treated by the narcissist. In order to help you understand what Harry may well be dealing with now, I not only explain the behaviours that are subjected against him, for instance, I've explained the range of devaluing behaviours he can expect, but I also do so by drawing analogies with other real-life examples. And I explained that Harry is in hell through the case of Alan and Catherine Kasenhoff. On this occasion, I'm going to provide you with some video material which helps you understand not only more about the narcissistic dynamic involving Alan Kasenhoff and his family, but also what Harry could find himself experiencing also. I'm going to play the first video for you. For some reason, it only has the audio recording. I suspect it might be the case that the camera was switched off when this was recorded, or a thumb was placed across it or such like. The point is that you can glean enough about the narcissistic behaviours from the audio, and also to apply that to a situation that Harry is likely to find himself in. Let's now play that piece of footage.
So tell me what happened. And you knocked over an entire table?
My foot kicked it when I fell.
I just don't believe you. The lies in this house.
Daddy, she wasn't doing cartwheels.
How do you know?
Because I was in there.
You said what happened.
I walked in there, walked up. I heard no noise. Charlie normally
I
makes
heard
stomping
noise from
noise.
downstairs.
Because she fell over.
I don't believe you guys. You guys lie so much.
Where's Charlie?
Mom.
We're recording this. It's recording, okay?
A human being doesn't trip and knock over a table like that. So I want to know the truth of what happened.
And then I put my foot up and it hit it.
Okay.
This footage was taken at the Kasenhoff home, and it would appear that the issue at the heart of it is that one of the daughters, there are three, purportedly undertook a cartwheel which caused a crashing noise, which then caused Alan Kasenhoff to erupt with ignited fury. You can hear a child crying. That is the daughter that is accused of making the noise in the first place. His violent verbal berating of her is demonstrative of his ignited fury. His control has been threatened in some way, and therefore his narcissism has erupted with this ignited fury for the purposes of motivating him to respond so that he nullifies her threat to control. He is her father, yet his response is one that has no emotional empathy as she is crying and sobbing. He shows no accountability for his behaviour. After all, if she happened to make a crashing noise through undertaking a cartwheel, you'd ask yourself, does that really merit losing your shit in the way that he has? The short answer would be, no, it does not. But of course, to the narcissist, this failure to maintain a quiet house threatens his sense of control. And rather than reasonably perhaps go and investigate what went on and say, there was a crash, what happened? He immediately makes the assumption that there's some kind of tomfoolery taking place, which is demonstrative of the paranoia and suspicious mind of the narcissist. He makes no reasonable enquiry of what's going on. Instead, he immediately knows, because the narcissist always knows, what truly has gone on. He then berates this daughter, and then her sister attempts to defend her, stating that she was not engaging in the behaviour that she was accused of. Immediately, this, of course, is challenge fuel from the other daughter, causing Kasenhoff to round on her by yelling, "How do you know?" She responds, going to the evidence, "Because I was in there." That, of course, demonstrates that he would be wrong because she was a witness and he was not. But the narcissist isn't going to let that stand in the way of his need for control. He asserts that he heard the noise from downstairs, and the daughter explains that away immediately by saying, because she fell over. His response is one that's often used by the narcissist. I don't believe you guys. You guys lie so much. Remember, he's talking to his own children, accusing them of being liars. He's shouting at them. He's demonstrating argumentativeness, heated ignited fury, belittlement, labelling. You can then hear the child upset, sobbing. He doesn't comfort her. He doesn't attempt to soothe her because he has no emotional empathy. His rage is boiling over as a consequence of the threats to control that he's receiving from the first incident and then the questioning that has not resulted in any yielding by the children. He then states, a human being doesn't trip enough over a table like that. I know the truth of that. Sanctimonious, haughty, demonstrative of his sense of entitlement, pronounced judgment in this way. The child continues crying, and there seems to be some attempt by Catherine Kasenhoff to soothe and placate the child before the recording ends. It's only a minute in length, but it shows how the challenged narcissist responds in this fashion to nullify the threats to control, behaving with no emotional empathy towards his children, haughty behaviours, he's dismissive, and that he has no accountability for his behaviour. Similar activity may well be experienced by Harry. That if the children, simply being children, do something which perhaps disturbs Harry's wife's peace, that causes them to perhaps invade the study when she's doing something important, that would threaten her sense of control. It might be that she's taking a mid-afternoon nap after having been so busy doing 1 hour a week for Archwell. And therefore, when children are just being children, making a noise, running around, playing, that offends her sense of control, and she could well erupt in such a manner. The children are extensions of her for the purposes of commandeering their achievements, but when they threaten her sense of control, lacking boundary recognition, not having any emotional empathy, and more importantly, because there's no need to maintain a facade, because there's only children and Harry around, there's every likelihood that she could emerge with heated fury, shouting at the children, berating Harry for his failure to control them. Harry finds himself shocked at the way that she treats the children, but it is no surprise to anybody well versed with a narcissist that the narcissist would behave in such a way. Accordingly, this exchange here could easily be one that would be found in the Monty Shit Show household, perhaps Archie defending his younger sister when she knocks something over or gets jammy fingerprints all over, which offends the narcissist's sense of control with regard to having a pristine kitchen. The permutations are numerous, but the point remains that a narcissist is likely to behave in this way behind the scenes, behind those closed doors, where there's no need to maintain a facade. We will now move on to a further recording, which is demonstrative of the interplay between the narcissist and the victims, and also just as applicable to what Harry might be experiencing. I'll now play you the next piece of footage. As you have watched, one of the children, Ali, finds herself the subject of yet more ignited fury from Alan Kasenhoff. A dog has weed on the floor. That offends the narcissist's sense of control because it creates an unpleasant environment by having urine on the floor. Of course, rather than him realise, well, this is what dogs do and I'll just clean it up and get on with life, somebody has to be blamed. There is an offence to his sense of control, and therefore there must be a scapegoat for this action. Of course, the dog is one, but he's not going to get as much of a reaction out of a dog as he is out of a human being, and therefore his narcissism directs him to lash out at his daughter, yelling, "The dog has peed on the floor, didn't I tell you to take him out? Didn't someone to tell you to do that?" And he can be heard shouting again in the background. The mother is filming from the bathroom. The child is in a rather untidy room with clothes strewn all over the floor as Mr. Kasenhoff rants in the background. Rather than approaching the child, because at the end of the day they are a child, and saying to them, "The dog has weed, I asked you earlier on to take the dog out. Could you please ensure that you do that in the future?" Or pointing out the error of their way to teach them, "You didn't let the dog out and he's gone and weed. That's disappointing. I'm going to have to clean that up, but in future, would you ensure?" That, of course, is how somebody with emotional empathy is more likely to function, but not the narcissist. The fact that that dog has weed on the floor amounts to an immediate threat to his sense of control, which then results in him having to lash out in the fashion that he does. He has to take this act against his daughter. He has to turn around and assert control over her, pointing out her failures. He doesn't do so in a pleasant or constructive way. He does so in a vitriolic and nasty fashion, shouting and ranting. There's no reaction either from the mother or the daughter to this, which suggests to an extent that they've become somewhat used to the way that Kasenhoff behaves himself. This, again, is something that Harry could find himself witnessing. That, for instance, where one of the rescue dogs does a poo where it ought not to, that will offend Harry's wife's sense of control. And rather than just get somebody else to clean it up, after all they have a staff, she would have to lash out at somebody, blaming Harry, blaming the children, because of course with the narcissist, it's always somebody else's fault. The Kasenhoff case gives you a glimpse of the way that the narcissist behaves behind closed doors with the audio and video footage that you've seen already. It shows the ignition of fury that the narcissist has over the most trivial of matters. But remember, from the narcissist's point of view, it simply isn't trivial. From Harry's wife's point of view, whatever minor thing that might have happened, somebody not washing up, somebody leaving something on the counter, somebody not cleaning up after themselves, perhaps Archie missing the toilet when he goes for a wee, all of those minor things will cause an eruption of ignited fury in the narcissist, because those acts offend the notion of control that the narcissist subconsciously has, and the narcissism is geared with lesser and mid-range narcissists to have that huge ignition of fury. Lessers have a hair trigger when it comes to the ignition of their fury. Mid-rangers have a better level of control, but that control is invariably put in place by the facade. Accordingly, if Archie somehow had made a foul up in public, not that he's often seen in public, but let's just say that he is, in those circumstances, what happens is that Harry's wife would behave in a completely different manner to the which she would at home, because there'd be other people witnessing. The facade acts to dampen the ignited fury, to increase the threshold on the ignited fury so that she doesn't immediately react by going nuts. But behind closed doors, as we've witnessed with Mr. Kasenhoff, there's no need for the facade to be operating, and therefore the intimate partner primary source and the non-intimate secondary source family members get the full brunt of the ignited fury, because there's no facade management light flashing, if you will, on that dashboard of narcissistic manipulations to keep the fury in check. This is the kind of fury that Harry will be witnessing and also be experiencing himself. And the Kasenhoff case, with its video footage, is a useful opportunity to drive home that message.